surgery in the Middle Ages was crude and blunt and painful. Surgeons had a very poor understanding of human anatomy, anesthetics and antiseptic techniques to keep wounds and incisions from infection. It was not a pleasant time to be a patient, but if you valued your life, there was no choice. To relieve the pain, you submitted to more pain, and with any luck, you might get better. Surgeons in the early part of the Middle Ages were often monks because they had access to the best medical literature, often written by Arab scholars. But in 1215, the Pope said monks had to stop practicing surgery, so they instructed peasants to perform various forms of surgery. Farmers, who had little experience other than castrating animals, came into demand to perform anything from removing painful tooth abscesses to performing eye cataract surgery. But there were some great successes. Archaeologists in England found the skull of a peasant man from about 1100 who had been struck in the head by a heavy, blunt object. Close examination shows the man had been given life-saving surgery called trepanning, where a hole was drilled and a section of the skull was lifted, allowing smashed bone segments to be removed. The surgery alleviated pressure on the brain and the man recovered. We can only guess how painful it must have been. Surgery in the Middle Ages was really only used in life-death circumstances. One reason is that there was no reliable anesthetic to dull the excruciating pain caused by the rough cutting and procedures. Some potions used to relieve pain or induce sleep during surgery were potentially lethal. An example was a concoction of lettuce juice, gall from a castrated boar, bryony, opium, henbane, hemlock juice and a vinegar. This was mixed with wine before being given to the patient. The Middle English word used to describe an anesthetic potion was dwale, pronounced dwalu. The hemlock juice alone could easily have caused death. While the anesthetic might induce a profound sleep, allowing a surgery to take place, it might be so strong that the patient would stop breathing. Paracelsus, a medieval Swiss physician, was the first to use ether for its anesthetic qualities. Ether did not gain wide acceptance and its use declined. It was rediscovered in America some 300 years later. Paracelsus also used laudanum, a tincture of opium, to alleviate pain. Early medieval medicine was often a mix of the pagan, religious and scientific. As the Church gained more control, pagan rituals were made punishable offenses. One such punishable offense might have been the following. When the healer approaches the house where the sick person lies, if the healer finds a stone lying nearby, he turns the stone over and looks in the place where the stone was lying, to see if there anything living under it, and if the healer finds there a worm or a fly or an ant or anything that moves, the healer, avers that the sick person will recover. From the corrector and physician. Patients who had contracted the bubonic plague were told to perform penance, the practice of confessing one's sins, then performing a religious devotion prescribed by a priest, a common treatment. They were told they might be spared death if they correctly confessed their sins. Blockage of urine in the bladder, due to syphilis and other venereal diseases, was fairly common at a time when antibiotics were not available. The urinary catheter, a metal tube inserted through the urethra. When a tube could not easily be passed into the bladder to relieve the obstruction, other procedures to enter the bladder were devised, some quite novel, though all probably as painful and dangerous as the condition itself. blockage of urine in the bladder, due to syphilis and other venereal diseases, was fairly common at a time when antibiotics were not available. The urinary catheter, a metal tube inserted through the urethra into the bladder, was first used in the mid-1300s. When a tube could not easily be passed into the bladder to relieve the obstruction, other procedures to enter the bladder were devised, some quite novel, though all probably as painful and dangerous as the condition itself. Here is a description of the treatment of kidney stones. If there is a stone in the bladder, make sure of it as follows. Have a strong person sit on a bench, his feet on a stool. The patient sits on his lap, legs bound to his neck with a bandage, or steadied on the shoulders of the assistants. The physician stands before the patient and inserts 2 fingers of his right hand into the anus, pressing with his left fist over the patient's pubes. With his fingers engaging the bladder from above, let him work over all of it. If he finds a hard, firm pellet, it is a stone in the bladder. If you want to extract the stone, proceed it with light diet and fasting for 2 days beforehand. On the 3rd day, locate the stone, bring it to the neck of the bladder. There, at the entrance, with 2 fingers above the anus, incise lengthwise with an instrument and extract the stone.